Let's just start with the most recent thing, and then we'll backtrack into what happened with legal aid, which is insane. As a lawyer myself, I can, what was written about you was so defamatory and awful. But let's not start there. Let's start with your more recent op-ed speaking out against what has happened with our Department of Justice. And just for those who may not be as up to speed on it as you are, can you explain how Merrick Garland and the DOJ and the FBI got to the point of seriously now taking a look at cracking down on parents like you, me, and our other guests today as potential domestic terrorists?
Right. It sounds crazy because it is crazy, right? It's a really, the language is over the top. And the language comes from a letter written by the National School Board Association, an organization I had never heard of, despite being elected to the school board where I live in New York City and Manhattan, and having served on that board for 4 years. The National School Board Association wrote this letter to President Biden, but I guess it wound up on Merrick Garland's desk, saying that they were documenting what they saw as criminal activity of parents at school board meetings. And they explicitly asked that the federal government intervene by looking at parents as domestic terrorists, their language, not mine. And they explicitly asked the FBI to use, among other things, the Patriot Act to deal with what they saw as the problem of parents at school boards.
Mm-hmm. And what they're upset about is a disturbing spike in alleged harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against board members. But no evidence of that has been provided. And so we went back and we actually pulled the letter. We looked at the 26 individual examples of people allegedly harassing, intimidating, or somehow criminally threatening school board members. And the evidence that they provide, Maud, shows nothing of the kind. There's maybe one or two where you're like, oh, well, that was bad behavior. But for the most part, I read these examples. I'm like, I'm very proud of these parents. I'm inspired by these parents who went out to their school boards and stood up to them. Okay, yes, some obscenities were yelled. That's not illegal. They were carrying "Let Them Breathe" signs at certain. A small disruptive group forced their way inside of the district office. They were politely asked to leave but refused. The horror. One school board may now limit public input after some meetings got, quote, disorderly. And one man was cited as having the nerve to ask if all the board members had their high school diplomas. Okay, I'm waiting to feel the outrage. I'm waiting for it to kick in. Here's another one. Grand Ledge School Board goes into recess due to public disruption. Board meeting had to go into recess twice. Once because someone went over their 3-minute time limit. This is their evidence to get the DOJ involved. A second time was after public comment when 2 board members were speaking to one another and the audience kept interrupting. So annoying. One time, another place, they had to kick out a resident who refused to wear a mask. The horror. They started comparing the mask mandate to Nazis. Oh, sure. That's cause for the FBI to now get involved. That's sort of loose talk. I mean, you hear that everywhere. It goes on and on. I can't believe that the DOJ took a look at this and said, we're in.
Right. Look, and just to make clear, Megyn, like there are behaviors that are inappropriate that people shouldn't do. Inappropriate is not even a bar or the threshold for state law enforcement to get involved, right? We could all agree that we want people to be respectful or not. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes protest isn't always respectful, but
weren't we just told that during the George Floyd protests?
Well, yes, there's that. But what I wanted to say is even if any of the behavior alleged was criminal, we have laws, we have law enforcement, we have state courts that are responsible for and do a very good job of enforcing the laws. I've worked in state court as a public defender, representing people accused of crimes for years. So the looping in the federal government is really peculiar because it's not how it works. If someone in New York State, disorderly conduct is a violation, it's not a crime. You can go to jail for up to 15 days for disorderly conduct. In other states, it actually is a misdemeanor. But regardless, state, if someone behaved in a disorderly way such that you thought you should call the cops, and they can come and make the determination as to whether or not they should make an arrest. That's not what's happening at our school boards overwhelmingly throughout our country. And if it does happen, call the police. That looping in the federal government is about something else. It's about silencing parents, and it's really, really troubling.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason there's that expression. Well, I'm not going to make a federal case out of it, because that's an elevation. That's an elevation. And normally the DOJ would absolutely laugh at this kind of a thing. And the fact that they're taking it on makes me wonder how it was orchestrated in the first place. Did the DOJ request a letter like this, right? Were they just the innocent recipients, or did they orchestrate the Biden administration, the whole thing?
I was struck by the fact that it took 2 business days for the highest law enforcement person in our country, Merrick Garland, to respond to the National School Board Association as if he was just sitting around waiting for incoming from the NSBA. Yes. I mean, that's a really fast turnaround. So I'm suspicious about it. I don't have any evidence that the DOJ was anticipating it or was involved in it. But look, we know that in May, when the CDC told us we could take our masks off, Randy Weingarten, who's the head of the teachers union, didn't much like that. And then that advice got peddled back. So we know that our government officials can be influenced by pressure from groups that want them to say different things than they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you and I both know as attorneys, it's not unlawful to even say mildly threatening things. I mean, in order to get to the only kind of speech that really is unlawful, and we went through this with the second Trump impeachment, incitement, I-N-C-I-T-E, meant, is it has to be immediate. It has to be obvious that it's about to cause immediate harm to somebody. You cannot prosecute somebody, which is what they're asking for, and the DOJ is threatening here, for saying, I'll get you if you keep that mask mandate in place, or this is bullshit, and I know where you live. Even if they pass something that's whatever, controversial, that's not unlawful. It's unpleasant. It's not nice, and I understand it could make some people feel uncomfortable. But the DOJ has no jurisdiction here.
100%. And I'll tell you, I was at a rally yesterday in New York City. They're trying to get rid of the Gifted and Talented program. Or Bill de Blasio has announced that he's getting rid of the Gifted and Talented program in New York City. And a lot of parents are unhappy about it. And we were on the steps of the Tweed Courthouse, which is where the Department of Education is located in New York City, protesting, yelling, holding up signs, making a case, arguing the facts about why we should have more gifted and talented programs and not be eliminating them. That's part of being a good parent. It's part of being a good advocate. It's part of, it's a basic American right to get out there and yell and protest and make demands on your public officials.